Hi everyone, thank you for joining me. If you like these videos, please consider subscribing to the channel and sharing them with others that you think would find them useful as well. This video is going to be addressing family, my family, and how they influenced what I do for a living. On my last video, episode 18, Cafe Magic asked, "Hello, I have a question for this channel. How much did your parents influence you in what you are doing for a living?" I think you said your parents were also buying and fixing cheap houses. I know your dad is a handy person. I wonder if this model is passed along generations and if you'd want your children to do that as well. That's quite personal. No problem if you don't want to answer. Cheers. I don't mind answering. I think it's a very good topic. And I think questions or topics like these are much more important than any kind of technical related question that people would ask me, like how do you close an owner financing deal or something like that. Those types of questions don't even require an answer really, because when you go through that process, for example, the real estate attorney, he's going to handle all that. So you don't need me to tell you something. And a lot of times people will ask me questions. I encourage questions because they make me think, and oftentimes it'll be good topics for a video or just things I can address in my other videos on the houses. But if you're really looking for the answer, a lot of times just Googling it real quick is a lot faster than asking me. So when it comes to videos like this that are much more broad and I want to be able to talk about something longer, I think topics like this are so much more important because questions like this are sort of more getting at, what does it take to be the kind of person that does this whole thing, not how do you close a deal. I close the deal the same way as everyone else does, and that's to get somebody else to actually do it. So just something to consider when you're considering what your challenges are. A lot of them aren't challenges. A lot of them are more personal than technical. So in my case, what did my parents do? Right off the bat, just so you know, I think I'm going to repeat this when I start looking at my notes, but my parents don't do anything like this. My dad helps me on occasion. He pops up in videos if you watch that other channel. Darker-haired fella. So he just helps me on occasion, but he's not like, they're not doing any kind of rental property or flipping houses or anything like that. He's just a normal fellow with that works. So creatively speaking, yes, they have influenced me greatly. So I make tables, I paint stuff, I engrave stuff, I do different things that I kind of group into creative endeavors that some income comes from. My dad, he's a craftsman, so I never saw him actually have a job. He's self-employed. My entire life that I can remember, he never had a job. Of course, he worked, but he wasn't clocking in anywhere. He was doing his own thing, and so I saw him juggle a lot. So when you're self-employed, it's just a whole different ball game. A lot of people don't consider those types of things. They work somewhere making a nice paycheck, and then they think that being self-employed is this easy, laid-back thing where you get to do whatever you want. What it means is you have to do what a whole company of people do. You got to be that in one person oftentimes. If you're doing kind of like small level stuff like I do. Big stuff, you turn into a boss and you end up telling everybody else and delegating what they do. So for me, what my parents kind of put into me are these things. And then other things. Of course, this is a very abbreviated thing. So morals, they build confidence in me, and then I wrote monkey see, monkey do. So that's just, how you can be similar to your parents. But when you move forward in life, you may, I think, differ from your parents, but then they instilled certain stuff in you, hopefully. And hopefully it was positive. You, of course, can have people families that instill very bad things in people as well. So for me, the morals that I think have been put in me, outside of all of the general stuff, the golden rule and whatnot, but kind of getting into more specific things, I don't do any kind of drinking, smoking, drugs, and I don't do any kind of cussing. And then I wrote socially. So like socially, all the social pressures, of course those things can be considered social pressures, but other things about kind of who you're hanging out with and kind of what you're up to and all kinds of things can be grouped into social. Those things were, they really weren't even specifically told to me as bad things. Now, I will say this, cussing. I was afraid of what would happen to me when I was little. I thought bodily harm would have come to me if a bad word would have come out of my mouth. I don't know if my parents have ever heard me say a bad word. I'm not somebody who cusses. I'm not saying that I've never said a word when something happens, but I don't do that. So for me, that's turned into just sort of presenting how I present myself. These other things, I just think of them as they're not gonna. It's not gonna hurt me to not do them. I know some people would say that these things help, but the lack of doing these things, I think, would very rarely hurt somebody, whereas they definitely hurt a lot of people. So it's just not something that has entered into my life, and it was from early on. So when I went to college, for example, the urge to do a lot of this stuff just wasn't even there. A lot of people go, how, if you get to college and people find out you don't drink, it's like you're from Mars or something, and they'll offer you a drink and you'll say no thank you, and then they'll go, what, do you have to drive or something? I think it's funny that that's the kind of thing you could ask. You go, no, I just don't drink. Wow, that's so good for you. And then they get slammed. And so I've always thought that was really funny, or they ask you if you're straight edge, or they want to ask you all these reasons, and they go, oh, that must be very hard. But like for me personally, it was just one of those things I just didn't even have an interest in. It wasn't that I was even really against it. It was just a non-issue, basically. So for me, I think confidence has been a massive part of everything I've done, even down to making these videos. While I'm just down in the comfort of my basement right now with everyone else in the house is asleep, I'm still making these videos and putting them out there and able to talk to the camera relatively smoothly, I guess. Make my other videos, which a lot of people watch that type of stuff. I've even, with different places, I will say, I didn't work at these places, but I was involved with some stuff where I had to give like public speaking, where I'm literally standing on a stage in front of rooms full of people, up to, I think the most was maybe 200 people, but with a microphone in my hand, and have to give a speech that could last like 15 to 30 minutes, depending on what it was about. So things like that built confidence. Doesn't mean that I was 100% comfortable with those things, but I had the confidence to do certain stuff. And some of that stuff's really subtle as well, too. It just means, like, you can have two people that are equally as skilled in working on a house or something like that, but one guy may always do it as a, working for a contractor that fixes other people's houses, whereas then the next guy goes, you know what, I'm going to buy my house, I'm going to buy a house, I'm going to fix it up, and then I'm going to sell the thing myself. Keep your job, and he does that as well, at the same time. So confidence can come out in so many ways. It could just be the way you're dealing with somebody. So if you're dealing with somebody doing a deal, like buying a house from them, or you're selling them something, and you don't seem confident, you could, it's not cocky. Don't get it confused with cocky. Confidence is one of those things where it's almost like what confident means is that you instill confidence in other people that you are going to be able to handle something the appropriate way. So for me, that came from, I wrote Country Boy. Now, I wasn't somebody, running around and, with a piece of straw hanging out of my mouth, but for most of y'all, I lived out in the middle of nowhere. You can hear my voice. So that's what I'm saying, Country Boy. I was in a very rural location, out in a bunch of land, so I ran around in the woods barefoot quite a bit, building forts, all that type of stuff. So I was able, down here I wrote, I had freedom, but it was with clear limits, and that's a important part of that. I was athletic, or still am, I guess, but I've always been athletic, creative, and extremely active. And again, the freedom with clear limits. So what that means, like for me, is that I've had the freedom to kind of make my own decisions, but then these other things, not specifically those, but just these other kind of like instilled limits were in my head. But they weren't limitations, really. They were just where I knew the edges were, and I think that's important. Going forward, you've got to know, the edges of where you can go in whatever it is you're doing. So that's what I think the value of being a child in a normal, nice family is. It's just training for when you're an adult, in a wild as H world is the truth of it. So it's just a very safe place to practice adulthood at a young age with the guidance of two responsible grown-ups. So monkey see, monkey do. I think that's pretty clear. People are going to end up with certain traits of their parents, and I'm not specifically talking about these. I'm talking about just how you move, how you act. It could be genetic. It could just be because you develop certain speech patterns and all that kind of stuff. But I think that type of thing does play a role. I think it's super funny how certain people end up so much like their parents. And it's kind of funny, like I know people that I knew in college and or high school, and they were much different than their parents, but it's like you're slowly, as you get older, not everybody, but a lot of people, they'll just start picking up these traits, and some of it's just so specific to their parents. So it's funny. So this is all positive. Now let me be a little hard on my family. Bad examples, just as important, still just as important. And when I say bad examples, I don't mean you see your dad beating your mom. I'm just talking about maybe, for example, you don't see them doing something, whereas you would go, you know what, they should have done that, or not even they should have done that. I'm not seeing him do that, and it causes this. So going forward, I would like to do that. So from here, we'll be a little bit scripted because this is going to keep me from going too far off. So I'm going to be doing a little bit of reading. While I appreciated my dad's hard work and independent way of making an income, I saw that it was not an efficient long-term solution to a problem. The problem being making money. It's a repeating cycle that, unless changed, never ends. Making more money requires more work, and doing less work makes less money. Sorry, I've already filmed this video a couple of times, and I'm thinking about other stuff I've already said and distracting myself. This is a hard video to make. It's going to get harder as I get towards the end once I start getting a little more comfortable with the topic. The key for me was establishing passive income, meaning simply making money from past labors, not strictly the IRS definition and how passive income is taxed. I realized this for the first time after reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That's a book. This book. If you haven't read this book and you've got any idea to make $1 in your life, this is an excellent one to read if you're on a beginner level. I think even if you are somebody who's kind of got things going, but you sort of cowboyed it up, a lot of the ways I've done stuff, this still could be a very valuable book. As you can see, the #1 New York best time seller. My God, there's no telling how long this has been on that and how many times it's been a bestseller. But it is an extremely good book, and I think that it's got a great title. Once you read this book, you'll get it. So the little slogan here at the bottom, I don't know, slogan or whatever, just what it says, catchphrase: what the rich teach their kids about money that the poor and middle class do not. And that sort of outlays Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the title is not being mean in any way. But it's just sort of a mentality that this book addresses. And the book just lays out the cash flow in relation to assets and liabilities. It talks about other things, but for me, touching on assets and liabilities, and then sort of how cash flows into those and out of those, basically, is what's so important. And this is what led to me wanting to purchase real estate to hold it as rental property. So me acquiring assets and turning them into income-generating assets, because there's a difference. And y'all can look up, Google assets and liabilities if you're not familiar with that, or just get that book. So this has led me to the answer to this person's question. The short answer is no. My parents did not directly influence me to get into real estate, but I feel like my positive upbringing led me to realizing it was a good path. And I think that everybody's going to have limitations. Any parent's going to have limitations. But right there, it would be the goal of being a parent is, while you may not be able to offer something directly to set your child up to be open to opportunity, to realize when opportunity is there, just to shape that person into the kind of person that can be more successful than you are, even if you can't be the one that just sets them right up into a higher position. So for me, that I guess would be one of my, in regards to businessy type stuff, that's something I would be very thankful to my parents for. So that question that was left here was sort of broken into, I think, two parts. The last part of it being, I wonder if this model is passed along generations, meaning that, like, if your dad's a real estate mogul, you're going to be a real estate mogul. I said, of course it can be, but nothing is exclusive. One of my real estate role models has a son in prison, while others like myself are the first to get into this field or anything resembling it, which is a great reason why it is 100% ignorant to have a negative view of successful people. So that last part was me going off on a tangent on the keyboard. Luckily, the keyboard slows me down. I can't type as fast as I can talk. So I'm touching on someone that I look up to and that does real estate, and one of the people who have kind of inspired me. So this is within my circle. This isn't just some, thing I read in a book. He has a son that's had a lot of troubles, that if you just strictly went on that it was a generational thing, that you would think that that person had all this opportunity, and they really do. They have a lot of opportunity, but, didn't work out. Then in my case, it's all new as far as my family tree goes, getting into this type of thing. So that's why I'm saying that it is, basically it is such, I say, I'm being nice saying ignorant. I think it's just stupid, but a lot of times it is just ignorant when people are just so mean or just hold such silly views on people strictly based on how much money they have. I'm not talking about, I met this guy one time and he was driving this, Ferrari, and he gave me the finger. Therefore, every rich person is, an a-hole. Within my business, making and selling furniture, I've almost found that the more money people have, the nicer they are to me. And I'm not saying that I had a view or anything ahead of time, but like within my own business, I think it's almost misunderstandings in ways. Like in my own business, going off topic here, when I'm selling something to somebody who doesn't have the money to buy it, but they want it, that turns into a much harder sale. It's when a person has money and they're just buying something from you, they enjoy the experience. The person who shouldn't be buying it, it's an anxious experience, and I'm usually the one that ends up having to pay for that in one way or another. But then in general too, that was a bad example what I just said. A lot of times what it takes to become a successful person makes you a good person to be around. Especially if you're a person in business that has grown businesses or done investing and you've had to involve yourself in a lot of people. They're often extremely personable people, nice to be around, very generous with their knowledge, their time, strangely so. Like where you just want to go, how can you be this generous with your time and this helpful and had time to make as much money as you had? And I think that is the answer. Because they do all that, it's almost like you become a magnet for success. So like with myself personally, I have pretty distinct ups and downs, and I'll be like so pumped about stuff and so excited, and then just become overwhelmed and so bummed out about my stuff. So I have to kind of try to, keep that in check the best I can. I wish I could just keep a positive, I don't want to even say excited, but just even keel. But it's just not me. I'm all or nothing a lot of times. So knowing what I just said, that there is no one answer. You've got good people and bad people that have money and don't have money and all this type of stuff. So what is it that's actually required to get into real estate? I broke it down to 3 things in this order. You got to have the desire, the money, and then take action. So desire, money, action. And you could even take money out of that list. You can figure out how to do stuff with money. One of my most profitable deals cost me $25. Technically, I could have gotten out of it without spending a dime, but I was nice and did one thing that cost somewhere around $25. Everything else was just arranging a deal. So that was wholesaling a house, if you're curious. But you have to have the want to, and you've got to take action. Outside of that, it doesn't matter who you are. You can do all this stuff without anyone ever meeting you. So if you've got, and all I'm saying there is, you hear a lot of topics these days where everybody's talking about the limitations that they have. And I think that even when limitations exist, it's just a bad place to like start from and focus from, because you'll notice, like, someone that has something that they consider a limitation, another person will have that same characteristic, but they just succeed despite it. So really, I think a lot of times it's about perception. Sometimes it's making excuses, sometimes it's perception, and sometimes the limitation really is some sort of a barrier. But, barriers are just something to jump across. Jump over. One thing that I've compared things to, like when I'm getting all these different questions and people are always telling me their scenario, and then usually it goes like this. They tell me their goal, then they tell me their problems, their limitations, and then they ask how to overcome it, like I'm some sort of a wizard. And the thing I tell them is that everybody's got this stuff. I've got all this stuff. I'm just not running my mouth to y'all all the time about what my limitations are. There's no point in that. That's my own personal limitations. The next guy's going to be different. Just know that other people have them, and then work on your own limitations. And what I've compared it to is that it's like a race with hurdles. And you got all the guys that are running. Normally they're all set. It's like everybody wants everything to be perfectly even and equal and all that, but that's just not going to happen. There's just the humans are just too varied to have everything turn out dead the same. You can be born with one of your legs shorter than the other. I mean, there's so many different things that can happen that are just outside of our control. And so I just say it's like everyone's running this race with hurdles, and everybody's hurdles are set up at different heights. Even if it's not fair that your hurdles are set a little higher, you're the one that's got to jump over it. So the way I look at it is you just practice at whatever height that your hurdles are set at, and then you're going to get better at jumping the hurdles than the next guy. And that may sound, way too dumbed down, and in probably many cases it is, but it's just the way I feel about it. And I think it's one of those reasons that you hear these rags to riches stories where someone will come from some, for all practical purposes, a very rough, terrible situation that seems hopeless, but then boom, they're a billionaire. Boom, they're a millionaire. Boom, they've done all this huge deal stuff, and they came from this place that many people would think would be hopeless. And I think it's because the issues that they were challenged by, they took on that challenge, and it just made them so strong. And of course, it's real easy also, I guess, to look at some crazy example and think that that's possible for everybody. And while I do think most things are, a version of those things are possible, you got Michael Jordan's good in basketball. You can have a guy who is also really good in business. And just because that guy started out in a low place and became successful, he may have had a very specific skill. With that said, look at some of these real estate moguls that are millionaires and billionaires. If I get even go in that direction, I'm happy. I don't have to, equal what they've done to be happy. I'm already generally happy. So anywhere from here up, I feel like I'm winning. And that's something I think is real funny. I get told all the time all the stuff that I'm doing wrong. And then it makes me think of Charlie Sheen when he was all messed up, and his thing he said, I'm winning. That was his answer to just all his criticism, is he's winning, and he was just out of his mind. But so that's what I think is, I think it's like a compliment when people tell me I'm doing it wrong, because I just say, even when I'm doing it wrong, I'm doing it right. Or even when I'm doing it wrong, I'm winning. And so I think that just marching forward, even if you're walking through mud, it's still progress. Let me see where I was at. I'm way off topic now. So we talked about desire, money, and action is what I say is required. And so the how-to, a lot of people get hung up on the how-to. And so what I just said in that, I didn't say, you need an education, you need to go to college, you need this degree, that certificate, and all this type of this license. You got to want it, you need a little bit of money, and you need to take action. And again, you can do without the money if you do very specific things. So the how-to, what about the how-to? And I say the how-to is easy. Just read this book and do what it says. I'll leave it at that. So what are the variables that push people forward and hold some people back? Difficult part of the video starts right here for me, because this is the part where I'm not being critical of what other people are doing. I'm just saying what has worked well within my family growing up and how I'm applying things now and what I see, statistics that I know about, all that type of stuff. And I say, for me, it's traditional values and a focus on being a good person. I think this foundation is what leads to a healthy pursuit of success, and I feel this starts at home with family. So that is the topic of this video. So obviously that's kind of what I'm talking about. And I say, look into, hold on one second. Sorry about that, I'm back. I said, look into statistics on children raised in biological two-parent households. And I have a little chart. I don't want this chart to be taken in any way negative, and I've written on the chart to kind of make it a little easier to tell. But this is children under 18 with no parents, father only, mom only, and then both the mother and the father in the household, with the yellow being what you want to see as far over as possible. The yellow is the good result, and that is poverty level. So the yellow stands for 200% above or 200% of poverty and above. So you can see these numbers here, which are sort of, the orange is below 100% of poverty. We can see how high the good number is and how low the bad number is, just simply because there's two parents in the home. The lowest number would be just the mother, and then none, and then having the dad in the household would be the second most positive result or situation, I guess you could say. So you can kind of take a lot out of this, and for me, as a fella with a family and a child, I think for me it shows the value of the father, because even when it's just a single father, that father in the household, and I think that this could be for many reasons. I'm not going to go into talking about this too much, because I would be kind of getting into something I don't know a lot about. This chart is based off of numbers from the 2013 U.S. Census. So this isn't some sort of, this is just them sending out the census information and financial stuff based on, referencing with the parental situation. So in what I'm talking about, all this is based around real estate and finances. So it is about money, what I'm talking about right now. So just having both parents in the household automatically creates that much better of a result just by doing that. And that is kind of all of what I'm getting to on this type of stuff, is that there's go to school, but you become educated, hopefully. When the time is appropriate, you get married. When the time is appropriate, you have children. And then all along, in my case, as a man, as a father, as a husband, you do the best you can to provide for those people. Just doing those things in that order, I think no matter who you are guaranteed a very acceptable level of success. From there, you're doing so much. You're creating a good example for your children that one day hopefully will best you or just be in a good position. And then I think you're also creating a support system with your wife or your husband. Your children could grow up to then be part of what you do. You're just creating a team almost. And I'm not saying it just strictly like you're having kids to work for you one day. That's not what I'm talking about. You're creating an environment that I think is conducive to or for success, however you would phrase that. So let me get off that before I had a hiccup there with the camera, but it was on a transition part in the video. in reference to the traditional family that I had when I was little. For me, this sets an example that has carried with me through every major decision in life. Now that I have a family, I see how much of a struggle it is, which only reinforces the value of the lessons I learned growing up. I hope to set a good example for my family as my dad did for his. What I'm trying to make a point on here is that a lot of people look at, say, a really nice traditional-looking family and think that everything's easy for them. And then when you grow up, like for me, for example, now I'm married and have a child, I realize that just doing things right is still very hard, or my version of what I think is right, it's still hard. So knowing that, I think it just reinforces what I'm doing, that if I wasn't doing what I'm doing, it would be so much harder in certain ways. And this wasn't going to be something I talked about in this video. I want to talk about this in a different video. But before I got married and before I had a child, both times, I was really weighing out what that was going to do to me as far as my finances, my time to do stuff. And what ended up happening to me, specifically before I had the child, that was the one that I was really worried about. When I got married, all of a sudden I realized that my wife also works, so combined we had more money to move what I wanted to do forward even more, and she likes what I'm doing. So that I very quickly discovered was not an issue. But then, when you have a child, it's not like this child's going to come out with a job. So I was just like, oh my gosh, this is going to wreck me. And so it was really hard for me to kind of make that decision. The decision ended up getting made for me. And then the same year that the baby was born, I tripled my income. And I feel like I didn't even do it consciously. It's just something that happened as a result of being in the situation, and the situation being something that you actually you want to do it. It's not even a bad thing. It's not a cost like having to pay your your electric bill and you're just some single guy in an apartment with not much money. Now I've got to the point where, yeah, sure, you wish those expenses weren't there, but proud's not the right word, but I'm proud to be able to pay it. I get satisfaction out of paying this stuff, and then it sort of took me out of my own head, and I had to do this stuff for people that relied on me. And I think that pressure, it was positive pressure. There's plenty of certain situations that I advise people to not take on certain responsibilities, but in this situation, it was positive pressure that made me go about things, I think, more creatively. And it's just a lot of stuff just took off after the baby was born, which really blew my mind big time. It was one of those things I really noticed. It wasn't something snuck up on me. I was just like, golly, I can't believe that happened that way. So why is all this? This is me asking, pretending. I'm just asking a question here. I'm going to answer. Why is all this important to who I assume is watching my videos? Because generational success and failure is a very real thing. Many rich families become richer. Many poor families stay poor. Most of this is simply based on beliefs, based on knowledge or ignorance. We live in a time where knowledge is literally at our fingertips, so we only need to be open to opportunity. And I truly believe this. A lot of stuff on the news right now, and I'm understanding of a lot of it. And then at the same time, we, even with those issues, or set aside the issues, we have so much opportunity that is available to anyone. I think we have more opportunity that's available to anyone than we ever have before. And I'm going to address that in a minute. I think, I'm going to walk through a progression of something in a minute that illustrates that. But think about what I'm doing right here. Now, this channel's small, but my other ones are not that small. With the internet, just everything you have access to, and you can do it, in a wheelchair. You can do it without anyone knowing who you are. You can do it with mental issues. You can do it without mental issues. It's a double-edged sword. I've said that before. The internet is so good and so bad at the same time, but it is so good as far as financial opportunities go. Most everything that I'm doing now has something to do with the internet. And so my reach has gotten so big that it's almost like in making less money, you can make more money. I make tiny amounts of money off an extremely large amount of people. So, with the internet, with the books that I sell, with the views on the videos. Whereas when I'm making and selling tables, I'm dealing with one person in my immediate community, and how many of those people am I going to be able to sell tables to? So the internet is what opened up this other source of income for me. And I'm teeny compared to what other people are doing, and it's already been such an influential and positive thing in my life, at least. Okay, the last part of the question. Would you want your children to do that as well? We are almost done with the whole video, by the way. This is a very quick, simple answer to that. I don't care if they do what I do, because I'm doing this for them, and they will be doing what they do for someone else, so that may require a different approach. Meaning that I am who I am, doing what I do for, at the moment, 2 people, and myself, of course. And then there's other people outside of my circle that benefit from things that I do. But my main focus right now is my immediate family and providing for them with my skill sets, specifically for them at this point in time with what I think I can do. So for me to kind of want to impose or have some sort of wish that they do something that I'm doing would almost be kind of like, it would be taking away options for them. So I want whatever they do to be what works best at that time, and I hope I can be part of that in some way. And so for them, it would be this. My parents did this for me without having experience in what I do, and then I took this and went into something different. So I'm guessing that will be the similar thing for me. I'm some, low-level real estate person, hustler that's been able to put together some scratch and do some stuff and take things family tree-wise up a notch. And so I hope my child or children end up besting what I do. That's a strange thing. I always heard that thing, where, something about parents hoping their children do better than they do. It's like, yeah, I guess so, but I hope I do pretty darn good. But now I can relate to that a little better. Okay, so what is your call to action? I'm pretending to be y'all asking me this. So, what are you getting at? What do you think we should do? I say, think long term. You may be a young single person not yet considering those who will one day rely on you. You may be old and think it's too late for me to do all that, but consider those that benefit from your efforts. If you are young, you will be glad that you have started early and gotten a head start. If you are old, don't just consider the fact that you are not long for this world and don't have time. You could be setting an example for your children or grandchildren, or even starting something that may take over and gain from it down the road. And age-wise, I get a lot of people that watch my videos that are older that say they're so interested in what I do, but then they put that limitation of age. And I get the same thing with young people. With y'all, you just need to, be patient. And, you got time on your side right now, basically. You're young in the game. You can learn. You got a head start. Read that book. Watch videos like mine and others that people do. And then, again, think long term. A lot of people are just thinking about themselves. Even non-selfish people, you can be very selfish. Like, I get all focused and think about something I want to do or something I want to achieve. And as you go through life, that changes. So if you think long term, you can kind of avoid a curvy road and I think take a much straighter path. Because there's certain things, if you're planning on doing certain stuff, go ahead and act accordingly for whenever it is you get to those things. And then the other thing I mentioned too, when people say they're too old for something, is old Kentucky Fried Chicken. Colonel Sanders, he didn't get that business going until he was in his 60s, and I'm sure a lot of people benefited from something that he did late in life. And in the scheme of things, as far as his whole life goes, it was a short-lived thing. So I'm going to end this whole thing right now. This is a progression of my family tree. And this is to make a point. When I'm done with this, I'm not going to explain anything. I'm just going to end the video. So I apologize if it seems cold turkey, but I just want to leave this as sort of a way of thinking, and I hope I read this out smooth. My great-grandfather was born shortly after the Civil War. He was a blacksmith and grew tobacco. My grandmother grew up in a cabin without running water. Her refrigerator was a hole in the ground, and their car was a wagon pulled by a mule named Bill. She now lives in a brick house with air conditioning and drives a Subaru. My dad grew up in a rented house, but a regular house. He now owns his home and is self-employed. He has many interests, but mostly enjoys spending time with his grandchildren. As a child, I lived in a trailer, then later a house, once it became a financial option for my parents. I went to normal public schools, had friends, and later went to college. I bought my first house at 24, now I own 8. I make money from rent, YouTube videos, ebooks, people clicking on Amazon links, and occasionally selling a table. My house is paid for. I have 2 trucks and a car. They all have airbags. My house is all electric with a great heating and cooling unit. All the plumbing is indoors and our refrigerator is in the kitchen. I don't have a mule. I have a 55 horsepower 4-wheel drive John Deere tractor that I use to maintain the land farmed by my great-grandfather. My wife is a stay-at-home mother with more college degrees than years I spent in college. Our child, who's not yet 2, has a better life than any of her family members before her achieved in a lifetime, and she's just getting started. So that's it. I hope y'all enjoyed the video and that it was helpful in just kind of considering some different things. Be sure to check out the links below in the description. And again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.